Property taxes, one thing that everybody loves to talk about, right? Well, as you know, property taxes in Texas are notoriously high, and I'm going to be giving you 3 reasons why property taxes in Texas are significantly higher than they are in other parts of the country. We'll talk a little bit about the process so you can know what you can do about that, and then specific things that you can do to lower your property taxes legally. All right, so let's get right into it. Property taxes in Texas are notoriously high. So I did a little bit of research and I got some information. The first thing I want to say is that you have to remember that in order for our government to run, they have to have revenue, and that revenue comes from taxes. And so I know everybody hates talking about taxes. Everybody complains about paying taxes, but you know, in the country that we live in, it's just something that we have to deal with, right? And so in Texas, the property taxes, from the research that I did, Texas is actually ranked number 9 in the country for property taxes last year in 2021. Now, I want to give you a couple of stats. I'm going to look down here at my notes just to let you know where Midland sits in all of this, where Texas sits in all of this, and then you can kind of come to your own conclusions from that, right? So on average, the tax rate for nationally is 0.9%. So just below 1%. That's what the tax rate is. Now, what you pay in taxes is actually built off of your tax rate. So we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but just know, let's say you own a $300,000 house. Well, if your tax rate is 1%, then you would owe $3,000 annually on your taxes. So that's basically how it is. You take your tax rate and you multiply it by the value of your house. Okay. And so nationally, the national average was 0.9%. Now the state of Texas is significantly higher than that. It's at 1.31%. 1.31% for Texas. And then what you actually want to know, Midland County, 1.27. So we're a little bit lower than the state average, and still higher than the national average. Okay. Now, on average in Midland, the average taxpayer paid, or homeowner paid, $4,115 in property taxes. And the average for the US was $3,785. And so it's close to the, it's close there, but it is a little bit higher. Now, what is one of the reasons why? Why is that? Well, one of the reasons, the number one reason that taxes are higher in Texas is because we do not have a state income tax. Right? And so we talked about the government, in order for them to provide services to the citizens, they have to have revenue. And if you don't have a income tax, then that's one revenue source that, the government doesn't have. And so they got to make up for that in somehow. Now, we get a lot of calls from folks from California, and they're asking, what are the taxes in Texas? How do they compare? And that sort of thing. And so if you're moving from California, for their example is they have a sales tax, they have a state income tax, and then they also pay their property taxes. And so property taxes are lower, in other states, but the overall tax bill that you pay might be a little bit more in other states than it is in Texas. Everybody's situation is different, but you have to look at the overall picture. And so in general, usually you're going to pay less taxes when you live in Texas. And so the 2 forms of taxes that we have that usually everyone looks at is our state sales tax and our property taxes. And so that's one of the reasons why property taxes are a little bit more here in Texas than they are in other parts of the country. All right, number two on the list here is going to be the fact that property values are going up. Now, with property values going up, obviously with the equation of the value of your property times your tax rate, meaning what you're going to pay in taxes, then one of the big parts of that equation is the value of your home. And so, as you know, in most parts of the country and in Texas, values are going up like crazy. Now, fortunately for us here in our area, they're not going up as much as they are in other parts of the country or in other parts of Texas. If you are in Austin or Houston, values are just skyrocketing. And so, you know, that is not the full equation. There's a lot of factors that go into calculating the taxes that complicate how the value comes out, but the value of your home is one of the significant numbers in determining what you're going to pay in taxes. And so as values go up, usually, not always, that's going to cause your what you pay in taxes to go up as well. All right, and lastly, in number 3, where actually in the state of Texas, your tax rates are actually calculated through your local municipalities. And so your tax rate is actually determined on a local level. And so that's one of the reasons why we say it is so important for you to get out and vote, for you to get involved with your community, because those decisions that are made and that are voted on directly affect your pocket and your bottom line, right? And so depending on where you live here in Midland, Odessa area, we only have really just 2 counties. If you're in Midland, Odessa, Midland County and Ector County. But if you're in a metropolitan area and, you know, it's like an upcoming area, they've got like bonds that they've got to pay off, or there's a lot of, you know, if you're increasing the services that are being provided to the citizens, then that is going to affect how much you pay in taxes. And so if you're in one of those metropolitan areas, you know, one county or moving or, you know, purchasing a home in one area versus the other area could have a radical effect on how much you pay in property taxes, which is going to affect your monthly payment, right? So the last thing is that all of your tax rates are determined at the local level. All right, now we got all that info. What does that mean for you, right? And so there are a lot of factors that go into calculating property taxes that make things really complicated to get the value. But the thing that you need to know is that Texas, the appraisal districts, they have to value every piece of real property every year at its fair market value. And so every year the appraisal district's going to put an appraisal on your property. Once your property appraises, there's going to be a protest period that we're not going to talk about on this video, but we'll have a future video talking to you about how you can successfully protest your taxes in order to lower what you pay on your taxes and just to get the correct value for your property, right? And so you're going to have that protest period. Once you go through that protest period, then the appraisal district's going to gather all the revenue or the valuations for the properties, the real property in your area, and then they're going to pass that along to the correct authorities. And that is where they're going to determine the tax rate for your county. And so the revenue, like we said earlier, is that there are government services that are going to need to be provided to the public. Those government services are voted on by the citizens of the area, which is why it's very important to get out, vote, and get involved in your community. But according to how much revenue needs to be generated in order to provide those services, that is where the tax rate is going to come from. And so that's why we say that's why we say like the value of your home could possibly raise your taxes, or it could possibly lower your taxes. Obviously, if the value of your home goes up 20, 30, 40%, there's absolutely nothing you can do about that. That example could happen when you purchase like a new construction home. So whenever you purchase a new construction home, right, the tax value is usually just on the land. And then the builder builds a home, and then they have the improvements, which is the house. And then that's what's going to substantially change the property taxes on that home. And so if they go up quite a bit, and the tax rate, you know, stays the same or goes down or whatever else, because the value you were appraised at went up so much, there's nothing you can do about it, right? And so So tax rate along with the value of your property is what's important. Now we're going to talk about the thing that everybody wants to talk about, right? That is, how do you lower your tax bill? How do you pay less in taxes? Well, in Texas, we have exemptions. We have some of the more popular and familiar exemptions are your homestead exemption, your over 65 exemption, and then veterans also have an exemption as well. And so this is what also makes it complicated for the appraisal district whenever they're trying to calculate how much revenue they're going to, what tax rate they're actually going to charge in order to get the revenue that they need, right? Because every year you have more tax exemptions, you have more different values going up and down, and so they have to get all of this information together and then make a determination on what the rate needs to be in order to basically keep the city running, right? So let's talk a little bit about your homestead exemption. This is one of the exemptions that every homeowner, as long as the home is your primary residence, you can take your homestead exemption. And what the homestead exemption is it limits the increase in value to where it can only be, the increase in value of your home can only go up by 10%, right? And so you're also going to get a little bit off on your value of your home as well, but you'll have to look at, you'll have to go to your appraisal district, get that information and figure out how much you're going to get off on your taxes. And the way this works is, for example, if you're a veteran and you are between 10 and 90% disabled, there's a chart that they have, but let's say you get a $10,000 exemption on your taxes. Going with our example of the $300,000 house that we used earlier, if your home is valued at $300,000 and you have a $10,000 exemption, they're going to take that $10,000 off the value of your property. Right? So instead of paying taxes on $300,000, you will now pay taxes on $290,000, and then they'll multiply your value by your tax rate. So if it's a 1%, that could save you, basically, what is that? $100 in taxes for the year, right? So rather than paying, if it's a 1% rate, rather than paying $300,000, you would pay $2,900. And then the other exemption is your over 65 exemption. That is going to put a ceiling on the amount that homeowners have to pay for school taxes, which school taxes are the primary component of property taxes, right? And so those are the two ways that you can save on your taxes. Number one is exemptions. Okay, if you qualify for exemptions. And then number two is actually going to be protesting your property taxes, making sure that the appraisal district is giving you the appropriate fair market value for your home. Now, it's really important to protest your taxes because the tax appraiser does not know what your house looks like, right? They don't go out to every house and look at, what you've done to the house or what you haven't done to the house, right? And so in order to make sure they have an accurate assessment, once you get your notification in the mail, you should make sure it's correct. If it is not, then you should go down to your appraisal district and go through the appropriate channels in order to protest your taxes. So very important information, one of the main components about property taxes here. And now you should know why your taxes are a little bit higher and what that actually entails for you. How does that affect you?